Good afternoon, everyone. It is another great edition of Emprise Consulting Corner. Got a real treat for you today. I have Tyler Roark from the Intelitech Group. I've known Tyler for a handful of years, and I know he's known of Emprise and even Mark, who worked with him back in the day before my time. Hey, Tyler, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
Good. It's good. Weather's coming up. Spring, move the clocks forward, and time to get after it and get some vaccines, maybe, and start traveling again. So today, what I think we want to talk about, and then we can do maybe an introduction of the company and what you guys do and how you help people. But you're in the analytic space within collections, accounts receivable management. So I think that would be a good topic today of what you're seeing now, what you're seeing in the future. I know there's been some acquisitions, but yeah, just maybe you can go through a little bit of what you guys do and how you help your clients and how you engage with them.
Well, in a nutshell, I try to describe Intelitech as just that we make scoring work, scoring and data. And we do that largely through kind of analytics-based consulting. A lot of places out there give scoring and data, and that's not necessarily unique. And so what we do is specifically take that scoring and data. We really work on a lot of best practices and a lot of help in implementing them into the agency. And then we use analytics to make sure we know how it's going and make sure we can make adjustments. And then we use that to consult with our clients. So we really think of them as partners for better results, and then figure out how to make the score better, make the data better, and continue that cycle. So we spend a lot of time looking at the numbers and doing an analysis and ensuring that clients really are applying the effort and the to really make the scores work the best. And we engage our clients on a fairly regular basis.
Okay, now that makes sense. I know probably some companies do what you guys do from engagement, but do you say you're different in that way where it's maybe a typical scoring company just, hey, here's a file format to follow, here's an import export, and send us data and we'll give you information and good luck, thanks for your business?
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. If somebody hears from a scoring and data company, almost always it's from the salesperson or the analytics person that has been building the models. And our clients that don't have us, I often hear ask questions like, hey, how's it going? So the scoring company will ask that, and our role is to say, here's how it's going, right? So we spend time with our customers on that topic. For sure, that's absolutely the case. And so I feel like we're pretty much in a unique space where we're not a scoring company, but we're much more of an analytics-based consulting company, and primarily use our scoring as a vehicle for change for our clients.
Yeah, no, that's huge of what you just said. I never thought about it like that, where it's, hey, this is what I see with your data. I have a few ideas of how we can tweak some of what we've set up for you, opposed to, so are you happy with our service? Tell us what you guys think about it. I think, yeah, that's a huge conversation driver. And I know working with you guys, in the past we have some nice synergies where we're small businesses, and I don't know if this is why we care more about clients, relationships, and things like that. And I have a phone call somehow of an office I'm never in. But yeah, so relationships are huge for you guys. I think that's why when we have some mutual engagements, we work well together, because it's not just for the sale, it's for building long-term relationships, because we know this industry is super small.
Yep.
And we all know each other, we always see each other at events, so why not do what we do, enjoy it, make some friends along the way, and try to grow some people's businesses.
That's right. And I mean, I've known Mark for a really long time. We'll not get into exactly how long, but there was training of really old products involved. But how long I've known Mark, and something that he and I have always had a connection just on character and why we do what we do. And that's a philosophy, a core philosophy at Intelitech, is that we treat our partners like friends, we treat our clients like friends. So we want that we want what's best for everybody, and that's really what we always work towards. It's if it's not right for us to be at a specific agency, then that doesn't make any sense for us to continue. That what we really want is to make an impact. So that's
that makes sense. So how have you seen analytics change in, whether it's the last few years, the last year, or just, maybe the way that clients are looking at it or understand it? Like, what have you seen?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's been a long voyage. I guess if I were to go way back into my software days in Ontario Systems, when I think about analytics as a whole, I remember the advent of report writing tools inside the collections platform. And the idea there was, prior to that, the software vendors had to write the reports for the customer. So the customers would, turn in a custom request, and the software people would write those reports for them. And the report writing tool was an opportunity for them to say, hey, you know what, we give up. You just go do that. And so in some ways, those report tools had limitations, or they didn't. And eventually that drove an opening of the databases so that everybody could get to the data that's inside the platform. But that doesn't necessarily help you understand what to use with what data you need to use, what data is good. And so, what you would see at the time was just flying around all of these different reports and this data, and it was all really hot. And I think that consolidated for a while to a few metrics and metrics that people could get to easily. And I'd argue that left us a little short, where we needed to have better metrics, and it was just we were kind of locked in by the platform. And so we've developed some habits in our industry. I think our metrics, the analytics that I've seen in general, are driven from much more just long-term historical looks at data and trends and determining where things are going. And that kind of leads us up to really almost a year ago today, right? In fact, I remember, when the last time I ate out before everything got locked down for a while. And my estimation and what I'm hearing from everybody today is just, everything is pressing from all sides. You've got, consumers who are pressed, you've got clients who are pressed, and everything is just really tight right now. And so the need to be able to use analytics to ensure that you're able to get absolutely the most out of your business is now more important than anything. And that in traditional sense, we might think about like, who is the best person to call, but now we're talking about who's the best person to pursue charity on, who's the best person to text, all of these different options, just absolutely trying to get the most out of the resources you have at your disposal and run as tight a ship as you possibly can to kind of weather the storm. And so I think analytics in that way is it's a really good time to be in it, because it's really being driven pretty hard by necessity right now.
Yeah, I didn't think about that from the last year. We've always talked with clients just about knowing your data and using your data to make business decisions. And I think some people understand that, or they maybe don't know how to capitalize on it, whether it's because the tool they're using is too hard for an operations person. You need a programmer who already has 50 tickets on their desk, so I can't build these 10 reports. Or the opposite, we work with clients who, hey, we have 700 reports that show us things. Like, okay, you're making business decisions off 700 different reports. That can't be very consolidated and help you, collect as fast as you need to. But, kind of what you just said made me think and maybe ask a little bit more questions to help me understand. I think maybe others listening. So what are some of the other data points opposed to just, pray and spray type of philosophy? Like you're saying, whether it's charity, like what are some of the other non-secret sauce things you're able to kind of talk about, what kind of separates you guys apart from some of the others?
Well, yeah, I don't even know if I care so much about the separation and the secret sauce of it. I mean, what at the end of the day is important is your ability to really understanding what you're trying to achieve, right? As opposed to 700 reports, which tell you 700 things to achieve. The issue is, what is it you want for your business? Are you looking to increase your revenue? Or are you looking to reduce your costs? Those are two big categories. We can throw in reduce risk of compliance or whatever. And those are the three big things. And so then you just have to line up all of the data that you have behind that goal, right? And then, that data comes from not just your own system, which you have a rich treasure trove of information in your own system. But even then, most platforms get rid of some of that data after a short amount of time. I think most specifically of the call log of a dialer, those things don't stick around forever, but they do in our system. And so we're able to really take a historic look at that kind of stuff. But regardless, you align all of that and determine really what it is you want the most. And then you use data at your disposal, not only just yours, but data from a partner, data from analytics, data from machine learning, data from big data, and ensure that you're getting the most out of your driving decisions behind that principle. Whether that's suing, legal, I imagine that's I don't imagine. I know that that's a slower time right now because,
Right.
not a lot of people want to throw a lot of stuff in court. But I think it's going to come back, the debt is debt and it's going to happen. And so all of that kind of stuff, just understanding what you're trying to achieve and then thinking about, a lot of different scientific principles or logical statements, like if this were true, what would I see? And then thinking about what data you can get to prove that that's there or not. And we just have a treasure trove of data from our integration with some of the biggest platforms in our industry. And so, a lot of times I just start with I wonder what this data tells me across multiple agencies about this one thing, and try not to start in with a presupposition and just ask if there's information here that's valuable to others. But, when working with a client specifically, usually I just ask them to focus on what is it you're really trying to achieve? Are you trying to make sure that you're capturing every account that you possibly can in a campaign, or are we trying to make sure that we know which accounts we should stop working, that type of thing?
Right. Yeah. No, asking the right questions is, in anything, but it seems like that's really important to rein them in, to make sure they're focusing on the things that you believe are right for their business, and then they should, can counter with, yeah, this is important. These are my top 3 things. Let's focus on this. Then you guys can develop a strategy to get there.
Well, and then the flip side of that, right, is once you execute that kind of action, whether that be, working with a company like yourself where you do something technically different, you implement a different technology or whatever, what's key then is not to just assume yes, that we did it, but then to make sure that the metrics are back in place that you can analyze and ensure that those things are working. And what we find is just a lot of collection systems, and understandably so, they're built to are as automated workflow, right? That's their goal. Their goal is to make you be able to do more with fewer collectors, and they're not usually they don't have baked in this kind of concept of data. What should the data be able to tell you? Some of the newer ones are a little better at it, but even then they're still kind of following the pattern of the big competitors that they're trying to unseat. So, just having data available and ensuring that you can put that together for a meaningful story, I think is absolutely critical.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So is your guys' platform, you're integrated? Are you integrated within the collection systems, or would they log into a portal? I know all the big companies, at least that I'm aware of, that do analytics. You have your own portal, and then you have a API that you're pulling the data and doing all that, looking at graphs and setting up dashboards at different executive levels.
Yeah, so at a base level, we're integrated into the platform to get the data out. So, one of the chief kind of differentiating functions for us is that when somebody on a platform we're familiar with wants our product, they don't have to figure out how to write and get that data out. So on some of the biggest collection platforms that exist, and you have helped us with those as well, the idea is that we get the data out fairly quickly. It's not uncommon for somebody to start on our system and us be able to get scores and a model back to them that segments their data appropriately within a couple weeks. That's super easy for us to do. And so what that does is starts that ball rolling for that integration of the platform. But as part of that, we then also have the ability to grab data out of their system and bringing it into ours, and then providing those reports and analytics in kind of a standard fashion across our client base, and then allowing us to do continuous improvement across that client base to make those reports better and our consulting better and our analytics better, which in turn makes our score better and just continues to repeat. But that is, either done through our analytics people, our consulting, or some of our customers definitely do log on to our portal and run reports and do some analysis on their own. But primarily, if they're logging in, it is in an effort to generate some operational data. It's often not the analytic details.
Right.
They'll generally rely on us to do that kind of stuff, but some of them do. So there are a couple clients that really dive into the analytics as well.
Okay. So I guess maybe for people that watch, or just for my knowledge too, you probably have core platforms like we do that we support. Obviously, we're not afraid to get our hands dirty to figure out other platforms, but what are the core, maybe 2, 3, 4 that you guys, successfully integrate with?
Sure. So we have all of Ontario Systems software.
Okay.
So that includes both Artiva product lines, I should say, FACS and TCS and RevQ. So all of those products we integrate with and have a pretty deep integration with. We also work with Interpros.
Okay.
And we work with pretty much, I'm going to be honest, I think 4 or 5 other collection platforms that we're more familiar with than not, but the big ones, obviously, we've probably had the longest history with the Ontario Systems platforms, for sure. And so,
yeah, no, it's like you're like us, or hey, if we have access, you have access to the data, we can get it figured out. Might be a little more painful than the ones that we know like the back of our hands, but it's just some data points that we can figure it out.
Yeah, we have we have different interfaces. We have one that's fully robust that can give us all kinds of data, and then we have one that's a thinner interface that's easier for people to get started up on, right?
Okay.
So it's easier to get started up on a very thin interface, and then we can add more information to that and provide deeper analytics as we grow.
What's typical onboard time? So you sign a client, are you guys looking like 3 months, 6 months? Obviously, it depends on clients' availability to get you historical data and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in the best case scenario where we know the software, we are easily up and running within 30 days. It can be even faster than that, pretty easily. And then ones that we aren't on, it primarily is going to rely on how fast they can get the export and that kind of stuff done, for sure. And so what we try to do is work with the collection software vendor as quickly as possible to get up to speed and running. And so really, for the most part, though, we've had pretty successful implementations on many platforms, and including DAX and et cetera. And so we work with them pretty well at this point. But it's we had an Ontario client on the FACS platform that signed with us, and we were live really within 2 weeks. So it's not super hard to do. But that's what happens because we know the best practices, right? We're not waiting to see like, what does your data look like? What can we do? What we do is we say, hey, this is what your data looks like. This is how we get your historical. You give us permission, we'll get this part done. We'll turn it on, we'll be running, and then we'll sit down and talk with you and work on even more details. And then we get to start realizing that value inside their organization as soon as possible, which is really ultimately what people want, right? They bought the product, so they want to make a change.
Right. Well, no, and that's good to know because I just think of any onboarding, that's pretty quick turnaround. Where if you're looking to switch, I know it's different, but switch dialers, obviously switch collection systems, a whole different beast. But onboard a new, vendor, a lot of people just shy away from it, and they're fine with what they have because of the pitfalls, the timeline, whatever it may be. So, depending on the system being up in a couple weeks, I think that's pretty nice because then they can try to use you and, ask questions and really start making a difference.
Right. Yeah. And that's, another key element of that is having all of the services you need, right? So for the most part, we, as I just described, really we're focused on the scoring to enable that consulting and analytics, but we provide all the data along with it, and including monitoring for litigious debtors, for bankruptcy, for deceased, and all of that. Kind of being able to bring that through one pipe makes it super easy for a potential customer to install. But our biggest drive there really is to start getting our hands on the data that we can help them make a big difference, and so that's what we do, right? Right.
So what do you see, if anything, different? Well, I know we're kind of in COVID, but post-COVID with, the one that comes to mind is, Ontario Systems acquired Parity, like acquisitions of different companies in the analytic AI space. Like, what do you, or really in the collections industry, but what do you see maybe happening, or have you heard anything, or you have any insight on kind of your thoughts?
So I think that's an interesting multi-part question you just asked. So I'll tackle the AI part first, because I think that's one that interests me the most. I mean, the kind of real-time machine learning integrated directly, or not integrated, I wouldn't even say that, but just on top of that kind of daily feedback about what is working best in your individual agency. I think that that's really compelling technology, and that's stuff that, we're in talks right now with several different people about how we can help with that. Because I don't see that as replacing kind of an overall ability to segment your accounts and use analytics to drive in our consulting and our best practices. I see that as supplemental in most cases, right? Because what you've got is some real-time feedback that is pretty valuable. But at the same token, I'm super interested in seeing how that plays out over time, because collection software, the database has a limit. There's a sample size, and what you're learning is how you're optimized for that one agency, which machine learning is really, really good at. But what it's lacking is a big data perspective. And so machine learning empowered by big data and the collections stuff, that to me is what makes the biggest difference, if you were to ask me. And then you can, you need to be able to track that and analyze it and continue to adjust and consult on it. But ultimately, I think that's super exciting. The AI and kind of the real-time analysis of what's going on in the collection system is really pretty cool. And I think some technology is really good, and I expect that will have an impact and will be very good and supplemental to the kind of analytic-based consultant we do. On the other hand, though, where I see things going is I actually I think those opportunities are pretty cool, the AI, but when I really think about what is going on right now, in the very short term, there is just a desperate need to make sure that we're being efficient. And in some ways, if you think about how machine learning works, when your staff is really thin and you're working a lot of inventory, you're teaching the machine how you do stuff, how you do it well, right? And you're not benefiting from that machine learning across the whole industry. And so how do you really know if you have the best account, the best work strategy, the best opportunity to sue to whatever, if all you're doing is doing what you have always done and just adjusting? And so from my perspective, the biggest thing is this opportunity to see what our industry as a whole is doing, and understanding how they perform and what's a standard. We how many times have you seen the ACA? You and I probably both read that judiciously when they get the new ACA survey out of those benchmarking surveys. And I always ask myself, how do the respondents actually know all of this, and what is that sample size? Does that even matter? And so I ask myself, if I ask you today, what is an appropriate RPC rate? Right? How many calls does it take to get one RPC? If I asked you that question, you'd have an answer. If I asked anybody else in your building that question, they'd have a different answer. And the question I have is what is it? And for me, that's really what I'm looking for and spending a lot of time in, is analyzing across the scores of clients we have to determine what is the right answer for these different individual metrics that can make a difference, and being able to compare that across the whole industry so that whether or not you can optimize that step, or if you need to optimize something different, because we are all working on such kind of a thin line. That's what it feels like in the short term, and then the long-term impact of that will be even greater, is what happened to the industry after all of this. What is it we need to do now? How much is the fact that people don't answer their phones affecting our strategies and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I see the phone calls, and then with the new regulations that are going in place, there's a lot happening. There's always adjustments people need to make.
There's a ton happening, and if you think about it, what happens if I'm an agency owner, even an analyst at an agency, what I've got is I can probably look back to some degree over time and say, I can see this slow increase in cell phones result in this decrease in answers, and maybe they can do that, but even if they kept that data in a way that they can analyze it and do the analysis, it's still just an indication of their experience. And what I really want is an indication of the experience for the whole industry, and just how does that, if I were to, combine the calls of all of the clients we have as an example and just do that analysis, that's significantly different than a single agency's experience. And what does that actually tell us? I mean, is it useful? Is it not? What does it do to drive change? And, take that kind of bedrock of data and then look at an individual agency and help them optimize based on what they see in the industry as a whole. I think that's exciting stuff, and I think that's where you can get the most out of kind of that thin.
Yeah, no, I agree. Are you seeing, like I said, I know there's been a couple acquisitions, because it's probably just easier depending on the size of your company to acquire someone opposed to create your analytic department or software from scratch. So I still see maybe that happening, maybe with a couple companies or two. I don't think that there's a ton in this space. Are you seeing a lot of outside collection space, maybe some of the bigger boys that do analytics trying to break into the financial service or arms space, trying to get a footprint in there?
Well, of course, I spent a year at Angie's List, and, the data analysis that was going on, and the people that wanted to, in a piece of that pie was pretty intense, and a lot of data, right? And there's a lot of players out there. I think our industry is oddly sheltered from a lot of outside influence. And I'm not saying that it's not open to disruption in some fashion, but when I look over history, I look at like contact management solutions. How well was a big contact management, the biggest contact management companies, how well did they do at penetrating our space, when there's so many nuances and so many differences and so many different things, and the opportunity in our space is good, but comparatively to the investment they would have had to have made to move away from just a standard call center. Right. Those are the kind of things where I feel like our industry in a lot of ways is this kind of strangely sheltered thing, because it's big enough to matter, but not often big enough for a gigantic partner to decide to dive into, or a gigantic player to do that. So from an analytics perspective, I still see the outside players that will have the biggest impact are the ones with the tools, with the things that drive the machine learning, that drive the analysis. I think there's a lot of play still for that. But you can think about it. I mean, I've worked with people 30 years ago. I swear it was 30 years ago. It's not 30 years ago. Let's say 20 years ago. We'll just stick with the 20. I think it was 20 years ago. I've probably worked with 20 years ago that people who were exporting data out of Ontario platforms to, data warehouses. Yeah. And those were multi-million-dollar projects at the time, and that was a lot of money back then, and still is. And often to no avail, right? They didn't get the data they wanted, and they ended up just being glorified reporting engines. And so those lessons stick with me all the time, and I think about that. And so those are just massive things that have been happening for years. So the real question is, like, what is it you want to get done? Like, that's the key. It's that laser focused. Don't take too much of the cake and try to bite it all at once. You have to pick something. And so that's kind of where I see the external players. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, don't get me wrong, if there isn't somebody who comes in and tries to make it a big player. In some ways, I think Parity is a little bit of an outside player. They don't have a ton of collections. Really haven't encountered them ourselves, but our partnership with Ontario Systems, we're counting on that to provide some really good synergy with Parity. I think it'd be good. Yeah, no, I see that too. With I could see if someone broke in, it would be, hey, we're gonna we hired XYZ guy, someone who knows analytics from the collection space, and we're gonna spin up this 10-person team to try to break into financial services, and just send them to conferences, just see how it goes. Because if they have the tools and the platform, I don't think the investment's probably too much. You just gotta understand the business, understand the data, understand what you're doing. I think that's true. I think that's anything's possible,
Yes.
of course, right? And something's going to happen. But how many? I mean, and I don't mean to pick on this one particular, so I'll not use a name at all. There are some very large contact management companies, right? And how many dialers do you run into of theirs in our industry?
Right.
I mean, I can think of precisely zero, right?
Right.
In many of those cases, there are a couple that have ones, but you think about those really big guys that aren't industry specific. We have some pretty big giants that are industry specific, but if you talk about, you get outside that industry, those dialers, they're there, and clients use them, but they're using, they're having to customize it. They're spending a lot of investment in that. So I think, analytics isn't that much different. Now, the difference is I think machine learning is breaking that down some, because machine learning is much less, if you ever follow the chess, any of the chess bloggers or anything like that, they can identify a machine learning chess player fairly quickly, because it's just unpredictable. Like, it does things that humans would never consider doing. And so I suspect, that comes to our industry as well. And to some degree that will provide some awesome insights. And so I think that's certainly, a good tech to introduce, but outside players wise, there's just so much to learn, because this is a heavy domain experience.
Yeah, definitely. That's, it's kind of the thing I was just thinking of a lot of times, for us, it's, hey, we're gonna, use consulting company XYZ. We're like, okay, I haven't heard of them. And how long have they been in the financial service collection space? Oh, this is the first project. And we're like, okay, well, we're here to help assist, if you need some business conversation, and if, things don't go according to plan, let us know. Because I mean, it's Mark and us have been, I think, I don't know if he thought of the term or where he heard it, but he keeps saying conversational technologists. So, you can have it was business, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's kind of like we were talking in the beginning, and like, we understand technology, you understand technology. We like talking to people, we like making businesses better, so we can have both sides of those conversations, which. Well,
I'm sure you guys see that all the time too, right? Yeah. Because there's a difference between, we'll use collection agencies. I know you guys do more than just collection agencies, so do we. But if you use a collection agency and a collection agency comes to you and says, hey, I need, an interface to a website that does X, right? It is way easier to explain the requirements if you understand what X is already, right? As opposed to somebody who's never been in the industry, they'll be like, wait, what do you mean? You have what is FDCPA? What's that stand for? Those things are just those that's a steep learning curve. And I spent a lot of time in my life, educating offshore developers and trying to work on the concept of what a debt is, let alone what it takes to collect it and how you have to follow the laws. And so, it is a different animal. And again, I'm not saying it's impossible to penetrate. It's certainly not, but there is something about this industry, and that size and complexity make it not exactly the most fertile ground for outside players to come into. Right.
Well, you got any parting words? I think it was a good discussion, and anything on the analytic world, love to maybe give a little spiel of if someone wants to even just have a conversation with you, how to get a hold of you, and I'll put it in the kind of the description of when it goes up on YouTube.
Sure, yeah. So you can reach us at intelitechgroup.com. That's Intelitech with one L. So it's often misspelled with two L's. But we are the Intelitech Group. But IntelitechGroup.com is probably the easiest way. My name is Tyler Roark. You'll have that on the thing, and then put a dot between the first and last name, and that's how you can reach me directly. But in general, we're at a lot of shows, and we advertise a lot of places. So you're welcome to just follow any of those. But I welcome any kind of conversations. I'm not a big fan of secret sauce. I think that ever since my days at Ontario Systems, for me, it's like I want competition to make everybody better. And if you're a competitor like I am, you're like, hey, I don't want to win going in spades all the time. I like to have really good solid competition, because that just makes me better at stuff. And so from my perspective, I'd love to have those conversations and hear more. And so there are lots of opportunities out there. But overall, I think you and I both, at the end of the day, want what's best for the industry. And so, we're always have our ear to the ground and want to hear great ideas and want to spot great technologies when they're here. So that's, I guess, my parting words would be.
All right.
Reach out to me.
No, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of information on your website too. And I'll get this up on LinkedIn so everyone can reach out to you, reach out to me if there's any questions or anything, introductions. But thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. It's good chatting with you.
You and
we will talk soon.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. All right,
Thanks.
bye.